All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for showing up this morning to officially welcome back Kelly Krauskopf as President of Basketball Business Operations for the Indiana Fever.
What if the very individual meant to launch the WNBA into a whole new orbit is also the same figure the league's inner circle may be quietly working against? It sounds almost like a conspiracy, yet a string of jaw-dropping in-game moments, sharp off-court reactions, background noise of tension, and a ruthless, calculated move from the top levels of authority have convinced millions of supporters that a silent battle is unfolding against Caitlin Clark. The reality behind this developing story is deeper and more unsettling than most expected, exposing a league seemingly clashing with its own rise. When Clark was selected first overall by the Indiana Fever, it was celebrated as a massive shift, a defining moment for women's pro basketball. She wasn't simply another skilled newcomer. She arrived as a phenomenon, a once-in-a-generation talent who had shattered records and transformed audience engagement at the college level. Her matchups drew audiences that eclipsed even the Stanley Cup Finals and LB postseason games. She became the centerpiece, the must-watch star, essentially pushing the league toward long-awaited changes like private team travel instead of commercial flights, something veterans had pushed for years. Venues that once struggled to fill seats were suddenly packed within minutes, with resale prices climbing to record highs. The Caitlin Clark impact was undeniable, powerful, and instantaneous. Everything seemed aligned for a triumphant arrival, a grand introduction to the professional stage that would elevate the entire game alongside her. Yet instead of celebration, what followed felt harsh and unrelenting, more like a trial by fire. The red carpet vanished, replaced by constant pressure, and from the opening tip of her very first appearance, it became strikingly obvious this was no ordinary transition, an easy transition. The physicality was on an entirely different plane of existence. Defenders were bigger, stronger, faster, and they weren't giving her any room to operate, sending a statement through every collision, every nudge, and every crushing screen. This went beyond standard physical play. It carried a different edge, something that felt unmistakably personal. It appeared less like routine defense and more like a coordinated effort, carefully aimed not only at limiting her impact but at wearing her down, forcing her to doubt whether she truly belonged at this level. That silent warning was about to arrive in the most blatant form imaginable, igniting a storm of backlash that would pull back the curtain and reveal a bitter, simmering side of the league. The contact she endured on the court was only the beginning of a far more troubling narrative. The exact instant the entire sports world sensed something was seriously off came in an intense matchup with the Chicago Sky. It wasn't a physical screen in the middle of action or a gritty rebound battle beneath the basket. It was a brutal, unexpected shoulder hit from Kennedy Carter, a play that simply didn't belong in the game of basketball. Carter didn't just foul Caitlin Clark, she leveled her. It was a clear, reckless cheap shot delivered nowhere near the play, sending Clark crashing hard onto the court. The clip spread instantly, and outrage exploded across the sports world. This wasn't a rookie initiation. It looked like a calculated attempt to cause harm, a message delivered with intent. Carter's dismissive reaction when questioned afterward, paired with teammate Angel Reese openly celebrating from the sideline, only intensified the backlash. This one disturbing moment quickly became a symbol of a larger issue, highlighting the resentment and envy many believed had been building beneath the surface. The WNBA's weak initial reaction, a basic foul that only escalated to a flagrant one after overwhelming public pressure, told fans everything they needed to know. That was all fans needed to understand. The league wasn't stepping in to shield its brightest attraction. Caitlin Clark was left to handle it alone. And this conflict wasn't limited to a single matchup or opponent. It appeared to stretch across the entire league. It felt like a unified stance from seasoned players who believed she hadn't yet put in the time or earned her respect. Yet while the public argued over the foul and the league's reaction, a far more unsettling storyline began to surface from an unexpected place, her own locker room.
Time after time, Clark, arguably the most dangerous shooter in the game, would stand wide open beyond the arc, signaling for the ball, only to be completely overlooked by her teammates. The footage didn't lie. Instead of hitting the open perimeter option, plays were forced into crowded situations inside. While Clark remained alone, a near-certain scoring chance left unused. The on-court chemistry of the Indiana Fever didn't just seem off, it looked fractured, disjointed, and at moments almost intentional. Visible frustration, lingering glances toward the bench, and tense, quiet huddles became the defining image of the team. Speculation spread rapidly online, fueling a growing and unsettling theory. Was her own team freezing her out on purpose, limiting her opportunities to suppress her production? Was there resentment over the overwhelming spotlight, the massive endorsement deals like her headline-making partnership with Nike and the promise of a signature shoe, or the reality that the franchise's identity now centered around a 22-year-old rookie? Even comments from cornerstone player Aaliyah Boston failed to quiet the noise. When questioned about the apparent disconnect, her responses often felt guarded, vague, and carefully worded, hinting at deeper tension she wasn't willing, or able, to fully reveal. The storyline was quickly evolving from a routine case of a rookie adjusting to the league into the unsettling possibility of something far more serious, an internal divide. Was a once-in-a-generation talent being quietly undermined not only by rivals, but also by those meant to support her? The tension created a volatile atmosphere filled with uncertainty and mistrust. At the same time, the league's established power structure seemed ready to deliver an even stronger, more official, and far more damaging signal. And the hostility wasn't limited to what happened on the court, it was being echoed and magnified through media voices, including some of the league's most respected figures. Veteran players, both current and former, appeared to take part in a subtle but steady effort to minimize her impact while framing the intense physical treatment she faced as normal. One of the most notable instances came from WNBA icon Diana Taurasi, who, even before Caitlin Clark entered the league, bluntly warned that reality is coming for her. In hindsight, that remark now feels less like neutral commentary and more like an eerie prediction, perhaps even a veiled warning. Other voices in the basketball world echoed similar sentiments, defending the constant physical play as typical for newcomers, while overlooking the obvious truth that no rookie in professional sports had ever arrived with such an enormous spotlight and target. The discussion soon grew more layered and sensitive, touching on the complex reality of a white athlete becoming the central figure in a league largely built and sustained by black women. Many pointed out that the media's relentless framing of Clark as a savior unintentionally overshadowed the decades of work and excellence from those who built the WNBA's foundation. This dynamic fueled a mix of professional resentment, cultural friction, and justified frustration. What emerged was more than just competition. It became a deeper clash between an established generation that felt overlooked and a new star symbolizing a massive shift in attention, culture, and financial momentum. To some, she wasn't a unifying force lifting the league forward, but a disruption to a system they had spent years creating. That quiet, underlying conflict was on the verge of turning into something far more concrete, leading to a top-level decision that would leave millions stunned, speechless, bewildered, and utterly betrayed. The final brutal confirmation that there were powerful institutional the most stunning sign that forces might be aligning against Caitlin Clark didn't come from a rival on the court or even a frustrated teammate, but from the very group tasked with representing the United States on the global stage. In a decision that seemed to ignore logic, business sense, and competitive reasoning, Clark was excluded from Team USA's Olympic roster for the Paris Games. The choice sent shockwaves across the entire sports world, leaving fans and analysts stunned. Here was the most recognizable, most viewed, and most discussed basketball figure on the planet, an athlete who had just demonstrated the ability to bring massive, near, Super Bowl-level attention to a niche sport, yet she was deemed unworthy of even a reserve spot. The explanations offered by officials felt weak, surface-level, and unconvincing. They pointed to her limited experience with the senior national team and vaguely referenced maintaining team chemistry. But this came despite the reality that multiple players selected had less experience or were performing at a lower statistical level. To many observers, the underlying motive felt obvious. This wasn't just a roster decision, it appeared to be a clear act of exclusion, a powerful message from the leadership of USA Basketball signaling, "You don't belong here." It suggested that her popularity, her massive following, and the financial boost she brought to the sport were irrelevant to those in control. The move came across as deeply counterproductive, a choice shaped more by internal politics, pride, and resistance to change than by merit. With backlash spreading rapidly and media attention reaching a boiling point, focus quickly shifted to the Indiana Fever organization. Their franchise cornerstone, the player driving unprecedented attention and revenue, was now at the center of a global controversy. The question became unavoidable: where did their loyalty truly lie? As the spotlight intensified, fans, commentators, and corporate partners waited anxiously for the Fever's leadership to respond, expecting a strong and unwavering show of support for the face of their franchise. Second scathing press release condemning the Olympic Committee's nonsensical decision, a public declaration of unwavering support for their embattled. What followed instead was a heavy, deliberate, and crushing silence. The Indiana Fever leadership, including President Lynn Dunn, offered only carefully worded, emotionless statements about staying focused on the season, Clark's promising future, and long-term priorities. There was no visible anger, no strong defense, no sense of urgency, absolutely no pushback. And in that moment of quiet restraint, the true harsh reality behind everything finally came into focus. It wasn't just about a rough foul or a controversial omission from a roster. It was the calculated decision by the organization to avoid standing up for their most important star. Instead of challenging the league's powerful hierarchy, they chose to remain cautious, protecting their position rather than backing the very player fueling their resurgence. It felt like a deep betrayal, sending a clear message to Caitlin Clark that she was viewed more as a business asset than a competitor worthy of protection and support. The franchise had no issue capitalizing on her popularity, selling merchandise in massive numbers and filling arenas, but when the moment arrived to defend her against the established order, they hesitated. That decision highlighted a harsh reality. Even her own team seemed willing to prioritize stability and relationships within the league over her immediate well-being. This silence, paired with the Olympic controversy, exposed a deeper truth about professional sports, a constant tension between the force of financial momentum and the weight of long-standing power structures. Clark is the money. Her rookie salary is a shockingly paltry $76,000. The kind of revenue she generates can likely be recovered by the league in just a single quarter of one game. Caitlin Clark has already driven tens of millions in fresh income across the entire WNBA landscape. Teams that once performed in front of half-empty college venues are now packing out massive 20,000-seat NBA arenas simply because she's on the schedule as the visiting star. The league's media rights agreement, once valued around $60 million, is now projected to surge beyond $240 million, a massive jump largely credited to her impact. By nearly every financial measure, she stands as the most valuable figure women's professional basketball has ever seen. Yet she finds herself confronting a deeply rooted culture, an established group of veterans and decision-makers who feel slighted, overshadowed, and resistant to the sweeping she represents. To them, her rapid ascent isn't purely a benefit to the game but something that challenges their legacy and long-standing influence. The league now faces a confusing contradiction. It wants the revenue, the visibility, and the mainstream spotlight she delivers, but struggles to embrace the cultural transformation that comes with her presence. Key figures, from Olympic selectors to league leadership, appear to prioritize the pride and sensitivities of a few influential veterans over the long-term growth and stability of the sport as a whole. It's a clash that defies basic business logic, exposing a system seemingly in conflict with itself, with Clark caught directly in the middle. With opposition on the court, possible tension within her own team, and leadership decisions that raise serious questions, the future for Caitlin Clark in the WNBA remains uncertain. What we're witnessing is one of the most intense, unpredictable, and high-stakes storylines in modern sports. She is at once the league's greatest asset and, to some, its biggest disruption, a rare, generational talent navigating constant physical challenges in games, a possible lack of full support internally, and a powerful structure that seems determined to test her at every step. The WNBA stands at a defining crossroads. One direction leads to unprecedented expansion, global recognition, and enormous financial success, largely driven by this singular talent. The other leans toward tradition, pride, and exclusivity, risking the loss of new audiences and squandering a historic opportunity. The lingering question is impossible to ignore. Is the WNBA's establishment so committed to preserving its hierarchy that it would undermine its own greatest asset to make a statement? Or is this relentless pressure an intentional process, shaping her into an unstoppable figure whose dominance can no longer be questioned? The answer won't just shape Caitlin Clark's journey, it will ultimately decide the future of the WNBA itself.